Greetings and welcome to Sunday Bible Chat for August 19th, the third Sunday in August, which is also the 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And on the 19th of August, the Gospel will once again be focusing on Jesus is the bread of life. And this is actually the focus of all 4 Sundays in August. The whole discourse from chapter 6 of John's Gospel is what we'll be looking at every single Sunday in August. So you might be wondering, well, what I'm doing, what am I doing here, thumbing through this enormous volume? Well, this happened to be my doctoral dissertation. I haven't really opened it in 20-something years. But the readings for today prompted me to go back to my dissertation and look at some thoughts I had a long time ago on the whole idea of foolishness and what constitutes holy folly, hence the title of my dissertation, Jesus the Holy Fool, and what constitutes unholy folly, which is basically to be a fool in the biblical sense. And you might say, well, what has this got to do with the Sunday readings? Well, I have copies of the Sunday readings right here. And the readings are full of references to foolishness. In our first text for the 19th of August, we have a reading from the book of Proverbs. And wisdom basically invites us to eat of her food and drink of her wine, and instructs us to forsake foolishness, that we may live. And so there's an equation here between eating the food of the Spirit, you might say, and finding life, both in this world and in the world to come. The psalm has to do with feasting as well. Taste and see the goodness of the Lord. So we have in our responsorial psalm, Psalm 34, a text which also refers to feasting. And then in Paul's letter to the Ephesians, we have in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 20, we have an instruction that we have to watch how we live, not as foolish persons, but as wise. And we have to make the most of our opportunities because the days are evil, and therefore do not continue in ignorance, but try to understand what is the will of the Lord, and do not get drunk on wine, in which lies debauchery. Well, I'm not focusing on debauchery today, but I do want to go back to my own text, where I explore, as I mentioned, the whole idea of what is a fool in the biblical sense. And we have the answer in Psalm 14. 3 stanzas that I quote in my dissertation are, "Fools tell themselves there is no God. Their actions are corrupt. None of them does good. The Lord looks down to see if anyone is wise, if anyone seeks God. But all have turned away. All are depraved. No one does good, not even one." So then we have in our readings, in our gospel text, an invitation to feast on that which gives life. It's the same life-giving feast that Jesus offers the Samaritan woman. And when he offers her a well within with unending life, that is what he's talking about, and that is what he's offering us when he says, I am the bread of life, and if you eat of my flesh and drink of my blood, you will have life everlasting. It's the same life that he's promising to the Samaritan woman. Well, what keeps us away from this eternal life? Well, it would seem from our texts that it's stupidity, foolishness, willfulness, that instead of following God's will, God's law, we go our own way. We basically chart our own course, we willfully go our own way, and instead of being willing when God calls, we turn our backs, we run in the opposite direction and do what we want. And this is where suffering comes from. Basically, all the bad drama in life, all the mistakes we make, all the detours, all the suffering that comes from poor decision making, all that stems, you might say, from instead of eating at the banquet of wisdom, instead of eating at the feast of everlasting life, we feast on our own egos. We follow our own whims and then pay the price. So that is the message. There is a list of holy follies that I find, unholy follies that I find in Proverbs, and I'll just read some of them here. The book of Proverbs has much to say about fools. In Proverbs 10, we learn that fools are the grief of their parents, gabbing incessantly, uttering slander after slander, heading for ruin and poverty. Their joy is to do wrong. All are sluggards, evildoers, wicked and godless, rash, presumptuous, suffering from delusions, wearing the diadem of folly. They have no room for wisdom in their hearts. Accordingly, their mouths spew only folly, and folly is their own punishment. They lack reflection, they air only their own opinions, they are incapable of exercising self-control, and they gobble up precious treasure and oil. This is all from the Psalms. I'm assuming olive oil, which would have been a valuable commodity. Fools scheme nothing but sin, and as a dog returns to its vomit, so fools revert to their folly. That's a rather nasty line. As dogs return to their vomit, so fools revert to their folly. Yes, so that's what I was preoccupied with some 20-something years ago, looking at the distinction between holy foolishness and foolishness in a biblical sense. So the person who's foolish in the biblical sense is one who imagines that by building bigger barns, one can save one's material possessions forever. Of course, very few of us are farmers, but we find ways of storing and hoarding and holding on to our possessions and treating them as though they're going to live with us forever and as though they're going to accompany us into the next life. In addition to hoarding and storing and all that, we also ignore those who are less fortunate, the Lazaruses who lie at our gate covered in sores and without resources. We walk past them on the streets as if they have nothing to do with us, and of course they have everything to do with us. So part of being a fool in the biblical sense is having a sense of elitism, you might say, having a sense of entitlement, not having a sense of common humanity, our connection to others. We feel that we are entitled to the world's resources that we don't have to share with anyone else. And so it is, we bring about our own disaster. We bring about our own bad karma, to use a term that's not often used in Christian circles anyway. The choice, however, is ours. Jesus offers us bread of life. Wisdom offers us a banquet of food and wine that'll satisfy. And we have the choice whether to accept our seat at the banquet or whether we are going to go our own way, do it our way, and basically turn our backs on the amazing gifts that God holds out for us. So what will it be? Will we feast at the banquet or will we go hungry? I look forward to seeing you next Sunday, August 26th, and hope you find this reflection for August 19th useful.